Making a gelatin printing plate. Okay, for that you will need some Knox gelatin, a microwave-proof container, and the containers that you're going to put your gelatin printing plate in. In this case, I'm using styrofoam meat trays. They're cheap and they're a good size. I measure out some water in here, and I've already done that, and I want to fill it up about halfway. I don't want to go all the way to the top. That just uses a whole lot of gelatin that we don't need. But this is about thick enough for what you'll need. And I put it into the tray first so I know how much water I'm going to use. And then I'm going to carefully pour it into my measuring cup. I use that, and this is about a cup and a half. So for that, I'll use about 6 of these little envelopes in here to make the gelatin thick enough. Okay, so get 6 of those out of there, and I like to pour them in one at a time. It just mixes up better. If you pour it in all at once, it's going to start to get clumpy, and you don't want that because that causes air bubbles and it kind of wastes some of your gelatin. I like to pour it over the surface and kind of let it spread out. It's better if you can let it kind of slowly absorb the water rather than trying to stir it. If you stir it up, you're going to stir air into it, and that just makes bubbles that you have to get rid of later. This way, it doesn't get as many bubbles in there. You're going to pour, as you pour these in here, it's going to get thick. It's going to get clumpy, almost like, I guess almost like grits almost in there. That's what it's going to start to look like as you go. And you can see that, you know, I pour it in a little bit at a time, and it slowly dissolves. When I get to about 4, it starts to slow down a little bit as far as, you know, how quickly it absorbs the water. I like to give it a chance to all absorb in here. You're really making it a lot thicker. Usually these use like 1 cup of water per container, and so you're making it about 4 times as thick. It makes a real tough gelatin. And, oh, there goes my clock. Okay, now it's starting to slow down a little bit. I always end up using a brush to stir with, because a lot of times I do these at school, use a microwave in the teacher's lounge, and the brushes are always handy around my room. Okay. There's a little spot here that still hadn't absorbed water, so I'm going to wait on that. I don't want to stir any air into this. Let's stir it around a little bit. It's starting to get thick. Oh, and as you do this, you have to be careful not to get this gelatin. Try not to splash it around, because it is a sticky mess until it dries. Once it dries, it kind of dries into stuff you can peel off, but till then, like right there, there's some gelatin on there. Let me get that cleared off so it's not sticky on my table here. Okay, now that I've got these all stirred in here, I'm going to go ahead and stick it in the microwave. I'll be back. I'll let y'all see it up close as to what this looks like. Okay, you see that it is. See if I can get that in focus there. There we go. See, it's fairly thick, and there's still a little bit on top that hasn't dissolved in yet. And you can see it's kind of grit-like in consistency. All right. I will be back. This took about a minute 15 seconds, minute and a half in the microwave. You don't want to heat it up till it's boiling. You want to heat it up just till it's just about clear. And you can see that now it is kind of clear through there. It's got a little bit of foam on the top. Make sure I get back in focus here. A little bit of foam on the top. Depending on how much foam there is, I might take it and use a spoon to try and spoon some of it off. The other way is to use a paper towel. You just don't want to have a whole lot of this foam on top of the gelatin plate, just because it makes it kind of bumpy and it leaves voids as you print with it. I mean, the surface isn't smooth, and so you want to make sure the surface is smooth. One way that you can get rid of the bubbles is by using a paper towel to kind of collect them, either as you pour or after you've poured it in. So you want to pour it kind of slow, and I'm just going to pour this all in. And I'll show you how to get rid of the bubbles off the surface of this, because there are some bubbles on there. It's not too bad. Okay, get this so that I don't drip on my table here, because it will make a mess. And normally I would do this at the sink. Okay, I'm going to take my paper towel, and what I do is put it on the surface here, and then as I pull it gently across, it's going to gather up all the foam at one end and kind of pull it up a little bit. Okay, so I've got like a layer of foam right there at that end, and I can probably get the rest of that off by taking another paper towel and put it on there and just catching all that foam and bringing it up. Okay, there's one little bubble there that you can pop with your finger. Okay, so that's how you make a plate. This I leave out, and it will harden at room temperature. I don't generally put these in the refrigerator, because if you cool that off, then you're just going to get condensation when you try and print, and that doesn't work very well. So just leave them out. They will harden up and do just fine. That's it. Next up is printing with this. We've got to let it harden. Okay, so my gelatin has hardened up. It's pretty firm now, and we're ready to do some gelatin printing. For that, we'll be using, this is Speedball block printing ink. I'm using black just because it was on the top of the box. I have my brayer. I have a plate to roll out the ink on. And I have some newsprint. You can use other types of paper also. I just have newsprint for this demonstration. I also have some materials that I can use to print with. I like to use plants and things like that that have a good texture to them. Okay, so, one other thing that I've done that I found works with the kids is on the plate that we're rolling the ink out on, I draw a circle a little bit bigger than the brayer itself, because if I don't, they'll try and cover this complete thing with ink. They like to roll, and I tell them to try and keep the ink inside the circle. That just saves a little bit of ink and time. It doesn't take much ink to do this with. I'm going to get a little bit. Usually I use popsicle sticks, but I forgot to bring those with me. So we're using cardboard. I put a little ink on there, and I'm going to roll it out. And like I said, I try and keep it inside the circle there, and tell them to try and if they get this circle completely filled up, it will pretty much cover the brayer with ink. Now, when you roll the ink on the gelatin, you're not really applying any pressure. You're really just trying to put a thin coat of ink, just kind of floating it on the surface of the gelatin. So I pretty much let the weight of the brayer do the work. I'm really not applying any pressure at all. Okay? I like to take it and not go all the way to the edges, because I like the way the edges look if you can still see that it was done with a roller. Sometimes I'll pick it up and do it. That seems to even out the ink. Okay, so there I've got a nice layer of ink on there, and I'm going to choose some of my materials here. Ferns make nice things. Feathers also. This is off my coffee plant. But I think I'm gonna use these hydrangeas here. I've got a hydrangea leaf that I'm gonna put on there. Once you put it on there, you pretty much have to leave it. You don't want to move it around too much. And I'm gonna cut off some of these flowers just to put them face down. You want to put the texture side facing down, because the texture is what it is that makes your print. Sometimes kids have a hard time figuring that out. They want to put the texture so it's facing up, but then you're not really going to get much of an image. So I put the texture facing down on here. Get some more here to make a nice bouquet of flowers. Here on the gelatin, you just place them down. You have to work relatively quickly because you don't want the ink to dry out. Okay, now you take your paper and you place it over the whole thing. You're going to use the palm of your hand to press it down. You want to use your fingertips because you might press through the gelatin. And you press it down, and you don't want the paper to move, okay, because then you'll smear your image. You can press pretty hard on here. Sometimes easier if you stand up, but I'll go out of the frame of the picture if I do that, so I'm going to stay seated. Press it down all over. You want to make sure you get all the edges, and then you pull it up. And this, you have your negative of the image, okay? Then you have to pull off all of these things that you put on there. You want to pull them off carefully so you don't smear the ink that's underneath them. Sometimes I use a toothpick to help turn up the edges so that I can grab them. And that's a good. And then take another piece of paper, put it on there, press it down, press it all over. And peel it up. And there you have the image. You can see that it gets a lot of detail in the picture. Let me get you in focus here. It's got a lot of detail in the picture. You see all the flowers and everything around there. It's very nice. And so that is how you do a gelatin print.